The espionage narrative just grew a little more complicated. According to multiple reports, Israeli spies tipped off the NSA that Russia was spying on them using antivirus software made by the Russian company Kaspersky Lab. How did Israeli intelligence officers know this? Because they had hacked into Kaspersky's network. Last month, the Department of Homeland Security ordered federal agencies to remove Kaspersky software from government computers. Kaspersky has denied these allegations. Frank Salufo, director of the Center for Cyber and Homeland Security at George Washington University, is in Washington. He also served as a senior Homeland Security official to former President George W. Bush. All right, so Frank, first of all, can you explain the significance of these complicated revelations?
Sure, and obviously not all the information is public right now, but I can promise you that DHS wouldn't have taken the position they did, outright banning a company's products from being used within the federal government, unless there was a smoking gun, and in this case, maybe more aptly, a smoking keyboard, given the revelations that the Israelis provided. But think of it this way: it's a question of who's guarding the guards. In essence, your antivirus software and some of the software that is actually there to provide security can also be used in malicious kinds of ways. And I think what you're seeing here, there have been lots of rumors about Kaspersky for quite some time, but I think the smoking keyboard came out loud and clear very recently with the Israeli revelations, allegedly.
Well, so what are the next steps then, Frank, and what does the U.S. need to do to address this?
You know, we've seen the script play out somewhat differently in the past, but that was with Huawei, a Chinese telecommunications company, and some of the concerns that they would provide intelligence inside in terms of some of their products. So what I think you're starting to see now is already a tit for tat. So the Russian government, for example, is requiring U.S. companies to turn over their source code if they want to do business in Russia. The Chinese are also following a similar protocol. So I do think you're starting to see a bit of a balkanization in terms of where U.S. companies can sell some of their products. But I also think it's important to recognize that there are security implications that go far beyond individual sales here, that it's probably, we're seeing the first chapters in this, but it's going to be a book that's ongoing for quite some time.
Cyber warfare, that space is only going to continue.
It's the first look-see. Imagine, think of it as intelligence preparation of the battlefield. They're basically getting the landscape, and then they can use other means. And as we're seeing, a number of countries, notably Russia, have not been very shy in terms of turning to cyber to achieve their objectives.
Well, against this backdrop, now the White House has announced President Trump will nominate Kirstjen Nielsen to run the Department of Homeland Security. Frank, you've worked with Nielsen. Can you talk about some of her qualifications for this position?
Yeah, quite honestly, Kirstjen is a friend, as a backdrop, but I think she's a wonderful selection, someone who knows the department inside and out, someone who's seen it from a policy perspective, but also from an operational and bureaucratic perspective, brings real cyber savviness and expertise to the job, and I think we'll get the job done. It'll be really neat to see two strong women in the 1 and 2 spots of the Department of Homeland Security.
Frank, before I let you go, I just want to read you a quote from Tom Ridge, the first Secretary of Homeland Security, who said this about Kirstjen Nielsen, quote, "Kirstjen is not a self-promoter. She is a patriot and takes a mission-focused approach to her work. I think her no-nonsense, business-like manner is what earned the confidence first of General Kelly and now the president." Why is that so critical in this environment?
You know, Tom nailed it. There's no room for politics here. She's a wonk at heart first, and I think that's what you really need in that job. If there's any job that demands the ability to work across aisles and to ensure that you can work with red, blue, and everything in between, it's the Department of Homeland Security role. And I think Tom nailed it. And keep in mind that Governor Ridge was a never-Trumper. So the reality is I think that sings volumes for Kirstjen.
All right, Frank Salufo, always good to see you. Thanks so much,
Frank.
Great
to see you, Elaine. Thank you.
Well, our first discussion tonight, spying on spies. Russia has been accused a number of times on spying on the United States, especially during last year's U.S. presidential election. Now, new details are emerging on the same topic, this time by another country. Here's a report.
About a week ago, media reports claimed that Russia-based hackers used an antivirus software from Moscow-based Kaspersky Labs to hack into U.S. National Security Agency in 2015. Now, Israeli intelligence officials say they can confirm that. Over 2 years ago, Israeli intelligence hacked into Kaspersky's network. They found distinctive Russian hacking tools embedded in the network, following which they warned their US counterparts. It has been established that classified information has been stolen from the US National Security Agency by a contractor who had earlier worked with the agency. That information was downloaded on his home computer that was running Kaspersky antivirus. It is not yet known what other US secrets the Russian hackers may have discovered with the help of Kaspersky software. Kaspersky Lab has denied all the allegations. Bureau Report, Beyond.
All right, to get perspective on this story, we're now joined by Pranesh Prakash, the Policy Director for the Center for Internet and Society from Bengaluru, with the very latest. Pranesh, great to have you on the program again. Let's talk about this situation. We've discussed this many times about alleged Russian involvement in last year's U.S. presidential election. This time, Israel coming out with a new finding.
Yeah, let's remember that there are two sets of allegations here. And the news has come out through leaks from the US intelligence agencies. There are two sets of allegations. One, that Russians, through Kaspersky, got access to classified material from the United States. And two, that Israeli intelligence agencies, through Kaspersky, found out about this. So there were two sets of hacks that apparently happened. One by Russian intelligence agencies, and secondly by Israeli agencies. So Kaspersky, unfortunately, is in the middle, and other antivirus companies such as Symantec have, for this reason, refused to provide access to their source code to any kind of intelligence agencies for many years now.
What does this also talk about Israel and the United States' relationship, especially when it comes to dealing with what happened allegedly last year when it came to electing U.S. President Donald Trump?
So I can't quite comment about the election of Trump, but it tells us two things about the cooperation of Israeli and American intelligence agencies. One, that it's close, because the Israelis apparently provided evidence of this both to Americans and to their UK counterparts at the GCHQ. And second, that right now, for unknown reasons, this counterintelligence operation by the Israelis was blown apart by sources within possibly the NSA or somewhere within the United States intelligence regime, because someone leaked this information to the New York Times. So it's interesting to see what dynamic emerges, whether this was done with the knowledge of the Israelis or whether it was done without. So far it remains unclear, but someone in the US leaked this information, and I think it took quite a few people by surprise, including possibly the Israelis.
That was my follow-up question to the Pranesh. What exactly is Israel's agenda, if anything? I mean, is this just to continue building allies with the United States? Or is this just perhaps to bring into perspective about what Russia is doing so that other countries could be more careful?
If one looks at the geopolitics right now, including Israel's involvement, Israel's attacks against Iran and Russia's backing up of the Iran regime at times, and how Israel generally is aligning itself geopolitically, it's been against Russia. And so it's no news that Israel would be trying to attack Russian infrastructure, just as they'd be trying to attack they have been known in the past to attack Indian infrastructure as well, and indeed other intelligence agencies. But what So that, as I said, I'm not sure whether the Israelis actually knew that their American counterparts would be leaking this information, because it is bringing this counter intelligence operation to a halt. Kaspersky last year itself detected some spyware within their network called Duku, which they said was state espionage, but they didn't name either Israel or Russia at that time. But now it is speculated that that particular attack was Israel.
All right, Pranesh Prakash, getting us the very latest on this story about Russia, Israel, and the United States. Pranesh, thanks again for all of your inputs. Well, staying on the topic of cyber crimes, it was back in September when we told you about global accounting firm Deloitte, which disclosed that hackers broke into their servers. Now, while Deloitte believed that only a handful of clients were actually affected by the hack, a new report now claims that the cyber attack, in fact, affected around 350 clients. The same media report also states that these clients include some U.S. government departments, including the U.S. Departments of State, Energy, Homeland Security, and Defense, as well as the U.S. Postal Service and the National Institute of Health. Not only this, the United Nations and some of the world's biggest multinational companies also becoming the victims of Deloitte's cyber attack.